Good afternoon. My name is Gregory Stallone. I have been working with my group. Some members of my group are Tyler Morvik, Dylan Bornheimer, and we are going to explain power flow through a transmission that we chose. The transmission that we chose is a 4L60E transmission. It was produced in many of GM's vehicles. Some things that we're going to explain today are parts identification, what is inside the transmission. We're also going to explain gear ratios, and we are also going to explain common failure points within the transmission along with the power flow. Thank you. The first thing we are going to explain about the 4L60E transmission that we chose is some parts identification. The reason why we wanted to show you some parts identification first is because we want you to have a brief understanding of what is actually going on when we show our power flow through the gears. So to start off, we are going to start with the rear end of the transmission. As you can see up on the board, we have an exploded view of our transmission, and then over there to my colleague, he actually has the parts exploded on the table, and we are going to assemble them for you. First off, we want to start with the output shaft. The output shaft is splined to the reaction internal gear, which Tyler is now going to show. The reason for the reaction internal gear is for the parking pole. That is what its primary use is for. Next, as you can see, we have our reaction carrier, which rides on the inside of our reaction internal gear. Next up, once that is installed, you're going to have your low and reverse clutch plate assemblies. These ride on the outside of the reaction carrier assembly, which is splined into the case of the transmission. Tyler is going to briefly show you exactly how that will go on. Now you just have to imagine once they go on one by one, they will be splined into the case and be held in place by the snap ring. Next in the process is the low reverse roller clutch, which is actually splined into our low reverse clutch assembly. We do not have that apart right now because we do not want the rollers inside the low reverse roller clutch assembly to come apart. So again, Tyler is going to show you how that goes together. After that is splined, the next thing that we are going to assemble is we are going to put the reaction sun gear and spline that onto the shaft. Next is going to be the reaction sun shell that is going to ride on the reaction sun gear and on top of the low reverse clutch assembly. As you can see, we are going to move up over here. The next thing that needs to be splined is the reaction carrier shaft. After the carrier shaft is installed, we need to put in the input carrier assembly, which will ride on the inside of that. The last part that Tyler is going to spline onto the output shaft is going to be the forward sprag assembly,
which also has the input sun gear on there.
Up next is the input housing and shaft assembly. In front of us, we actually have two of them for you to show you. As Tyler's holding up, the one in his right hand is one that is already assembled. The one in the left hand over here is actually completely disassembled. First, we have our overrunning clutches, which will be splined into the housing. Next would be your forward clutch pack that would also be splined into the housing. And last would be your 3/4 clutch pack that will also get splined into the housing. They will all be held with snap rings, which will keep them in place. Up next in the process of parts identification is our reverse input clutch housing. As Tyler has in his hand, we have two of them to show you. In his right hand, he has the reverse clutches that are also splined into the housing, and he will show you how it actually goes on the back of the other housing. And over here, which wraps around the drum, is our 2/4 clutch pin. That is all for now on our parts identification, and we will be showing you more about the 4L60E transmission. Now we are going to show you what is actually going on within the transmission, what is going to be applied and what is going to be held during first gear, second gear, third gear, fourth gear, and reverse. To show you how that's going to work is we're going to show you with an application chart that we have on our 4L60E transmission. As you can see on this application chart, over here on the left hand side it says shift solenoid valves. We're going to ignore those for now. Later on in the presentation we are going to show you how those work through the electronic portion of the transmission. But to start off, we are going to start with reverse. In reverse, the reverse input clutch will be applied and the low reverse clutch will be applied. Tyler is going to be holding those up for you right now to show you what they are.
This is a reverse clutch pack inside a reverse drum. And this is the low reverse clutch pack on here.
Now, we are going to show you first, second, third, and fourth gear. We're going to show you it as you shift your vehicle into drive, not if you put it in manual low, manual second. So we're going to leave those for now. So in first gear, the forward clutch will be applied while the forward sprag clutch assembly will be held, and also the low roller clutch will also be held. Again, Tyler is going to show you what those parts are.
This is our forward clutch pack. This is our forward sprag clutch assembly. The reason for a sprag clutch assembly is in here because during engine acceleration we want full power going through the transmission, but going downhill and engines at idle speed, you want the engine just to be slow and the transmission to have full momentum going down.
Now, in second gear, our 2/4 band will be applied, our forward clutch will be applied, and our forward sprag clutch assembly will be held. Again, Tyler is going to show you those parts.
2/4 band around the rear drum, which stops the sun shell, and then we got our forward clutch pack again.
In third gear, over here, our forward clutch is going to be applied, our forward sprag is going to be held, and our 3/4 clutch is going to be applied.
Now the 3/4 clutch pack, clutch assembly. Here's our forward sprag again, and here's our rear sprag.
Now in fourth gear, which is overdrive, our 2/4 band will be applied again, our forward clutch will be applied, and our 3/4 clutch will be applied.
We got 2/4 band, forward sprag again, and the 3/4 clutch pack.
As you can see from our application chart, there are a few things that will always be applied, like our forward clutch, and then through our first, second, third gears, our forward sprag will be held. And now that you see the parts that we're going to be used, up next, my colleague Tyler is going to actually show you, while using all these parts, what gears are going to be used, what's going to be held, what's going to actually work within this transmission.
Now with power flow, the input clutch assembly is splined into the forward sun gear and the 3/4 ring gear. This goes over here. And this is a reverse drum, which is tied into the rear sun shell. For demonstration purposes, we're going to pretend that my hand is the input clutch assembly. Dylan's going to hold the low sprag clutch assembly because it's always tied into the case. Will you hold that please, Dylan? So during first gear, the
Forward
3/4 clutch pack is applied, and we spin our input sun gear. See, we have a greater input than output. During second gear, the 2/4 band is applied, wraps around the rear drum, and stops the rear sun shell. Now with this rear sun shell held, we still have
Forward
the 3/4
clutch pack
applied. Now in third gear, the 2/4 band is disengaged. The forward clutch pack is still engaged, but now the 3/4 clutch pack is engaged. Now we have a 1-to-1. In fourth gear, the 2/4 band is engaged. The 2/4 band is engaged. It wraps around the rear drum. It stops that rear shell again. And the 3/4 clutch pack is engaged. I don't know where to go from there. Now that we talked about forward power flow, we're going to move on to reverse and manual select low gears. In reverse, the reverse clutch pack is engaged inside the reverse drum, which is splined to the input carrier. So all power flow is now transferred to the sun shell. At the same time, the reverse and low clutch pack is engaged to the rear carrier. Now, as you can see, forward clockwise, at the rear we have counterclockwise. Now in first gear, disengage the rear clutch pack, we leave the low reverse clutch pack together, and now we engage the forward clutch pack and the overrun clutch pack. This splines the forward clutch pack and the sun together, so there's the overrunning clutch inside is now 1-to-1 to the transmission and the engine. So now this provides stronger first gear and engine braking. Now we're going to move on to gear ratios in our forward gears and reverse. Now with gear ratio, we're going to start off with reverse. First we have to line up our input to our output. So 1 turn, 2 turn, and about 2 1/4 to 1 gear ratio. Now with first gear, to line up our forward input gear and output. One turn, 2 turn, 3 turn, just a little bit over 3. So about 3, oh, we're done. Okay, now we start off with gear ratio. We're gonna start off with reverse. We have our input line up with our output. One turn, 2 turn, just about 2 1/4. So it's a 2 1/4 to 1 gear ratio. Now we're gonna go with first gear. Now the input and output. One turn, 2 turn, 3 turn, just a little bit over 3 turns, so 3.15 to 1 gear ratio. Now we're going to go to second gear. One turn, just over 1.5, about 1.6 gear ratio to 1. Now we're gonna go with third. You line up our third output. Write that on. Third is 1-to-1 gear ratio. Now fourth. Fourth, I did not even make one complete resolution, about less than 3/4 to 1 gear ratio. Some issues these transmissions can have is the lower roller clutch assembly can break and not work, or it come disconnected from the case. So you will not have first gear. But to know that you have that issue, you can manually select first gear and apply the low reverse clutch pack, and then now you have first gear once again, because it stops the rear carrier. Another issue is this sun shell breaking from the rear sun gear. This will snap when there's too much torque to power flow. So I'm going to leave out to show the issue. You will have first gear, but then when you try to go into second, you still have the same gear ratio as first. You have third gear, but then when you try going fourth, you still have the same gear ratio as third gear. There's no 2 or fourth. And also when you try to go in reverse, you have no reverse. Now other plausible causes are
Some other problems with the 4L60 transmission is their 3/4 clutch pack. They are known to get smoked, they are known to burn up, and on the transmission that we were rebuilding actually had a bad 3/4 clutch pack. As you can see here, this is what happens when the 3/4 clutch pack disintegrates pretty much. It is all burned up, there's no friction material left, it is completely toast. That is when you pull your dipstick and you see that your transmission fluid is not red, it's black. What happens is when the 3/4 clutch pack is engaged, all the heat goes directly towards the 3/4 clutch pack and gets transferred there and smokes the 3/4 clutch pack. And that is one of the problems we have. Another issue that happens and is pretty common in the 4L60 transmission is the reverse drum right here. The reverse clutch pack that sits inside the reverse drum also gets smoked, and is a common problem with them. What happens is during driveway shifts, when you put it in reverse and go into drive, it does not release the fluid quick enough, which keeps the clutch pack engaged and actually smokes it also. On this transmission, it also smoked it, and as you can see here, the friction, the steels and all the friction material is gone, so that was rubbing and toasting this transmission. The last thing that happens is on the outside of the drum here with the band. Also on driveway shifts, or whenever it shifts, sometimes the band slips and smokes. The band gets smoked and causes heat discoloration to your drum.